Many months later.
Did you get your wrestling hand signal down?
You don't know how long it takes to think of one. No, not that one.
I saw a lot of with like Steam where they were like, try putting it in big picture mode, and I was like, that is never a solution.
Why will I ever do
Not
that?
even a thing that should exist.
Yeah, we'll just pretend that menu isn't there.
It's like Minecraft.
You're very near
Avoid
Hitler's book for a second. Yeah. Has Banana slightly frozen now?
Yeah, he's frozen.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Not slightly frozen. He's a frozen banana.
A frozen banana.
Is that better?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I remember using the pink mushroom world one briefly, and just my PC grinding to a halt.
The Pink Pony Club background? What?
Pink Pony Club. I heard that song for the first time last week. It's pretty good. But that is the best part of Truck Simulator, is putting just radio stations on. Like finding like a genuine like Texas radio station or whatever it might be. It's so much fun.
Texas radio station.
But Texas just sounds so American.
I would think it'd be like, I don't know, just like all my exes live in Texas, then some Stevie Ray Vaughan song or something.
Wow, I lay my head. Is that George Strait?
Yeah.
God, he's really cool.
Waylon Jennings, I found out, has an interesting past. He was
They all do, don't they?
Well, he was the bassist for Buddy Holly. And so
that's dope.
He was the one supposed to be the one.
I was going to say, why did that stop? And I've just realized there's a really obvious reason. You know, I like to get on my high horse. I look good on it, like a knight.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome on in to yet another Gamers Advocate podcast. We're joined with AMKomnenos and Banana Hammock Republic, who was earlier today a frozen banana. Had some camera issues. Looks like everything's looking pretty good though. And we just finished our 50th episode, which was, I enjoyed making that video. It was,
that was a fun one. I like that episode.
Yeah, just a lot of clips of us just kind of off camera, on camera stuff. So we were kind of talking about it earlier that sometimes these earworm little catchy tunes or a sound effect will really associate you with that moment in the gaming sphere, or maybe that actual game itself, or maybe even the series. And so when you hear it, sometimes maybe even outside of gaming, you don't associate with what you're actually seeing or hearing, but also the gaming. But also as an earworm, you can think about that game long after, just because it's still with you. And I was a little hard pressed to kind of think of exact examples. I just know them when I see them, or hear them, I should say. When I hear them, it's like, oh, that brings me back. I know for sure, like it's not fair to any game I've played since, but I know for me, when the Baldur's Gate, when you enter the plains, like any plains just south of Friendly Armien, there's a tune that starts up, and there's also like a couple of different like nature sounds you'll hear, and that to me really defines exploration in a game. And ever since then, unfortunately, for every game after, when it opens up and I start doing stuff, I kind of almost half expect to hear that same sound, the same nature sounds. And if I don't feel like I'm really stepped foot into anything new from wherever I was. And it's just one of those, like, it's not just the sound, it's something emotional that it evokes inside of me that says you're stepping into the wider world. But that's the beauty of sometimes what an earworm can do. And I'll bring up an example or two as we get going. But for me, at least, that's kind of how it's always started for me. But
well, we've talked about music before in gaming. Well, that's my example taken. We've talked about music before in gaming. That, by the way, if anyone watching the video version, we had, I think, the perfect reactions to it. Just the across the board. Music can have this very visceral effect within you. So when you listen to music, you can find they can have a transportative effect on you. There's so many songs that you can probably think of that when you were 16 you listened to them, and now when you listen back to it you can remember being 16. And there's certain songs that I can always just associate with very direct individual moments. Thinking of something like Green Day, When I Come Around, for some reason I associate that with playing SimCity 4 when I was like 16. I associate the Nirvana Unplugged album with playing table tennis on an improvised table tennis board in my friend's back garden when I was like 14. You just remember it and associate those two together. So I think we're going to find that most of these, as is almost always the case with us, because we're gamers of a certain generation of a certain age, there's going to be a nostalgic part to it. There's going to be this takes me back. We're probably not going to find that many of these iconic sound effects are ones that we've heard in the last 1 year or 2 years. It's going to be stuff from when we were kids. And I have a tiny side one, which is very briefly the "you must gather your party before venturing forth."
You must gather your party before venturing forth.
That is in my soul. But I think the main one that I would have that just transports me back, now that Banana's taken my option number one, is the victory fanfare from Final Fantasy. The da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That, to me, isn't associated with one day and age. Not at all, because it's in Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 10. It's in all of them. Even in the remake, you have Barrett literally doing what I just did and just sort of chanting it because he's really happy that you won.
Which, by the way, I feel like that's something we need to stop doing. Having the characters in games sing that victory fanfare. I think it started with Final Fantasy 15 when Prompto would do it.
Yep.
And it was like a nice little like homage in that moment. And then it just appears in like every game afterwards. And I'm like, all right, we all know the victory fanfare.
The weird thing here is I completely disagree. I love it. Yeah, I don't mind doing it every battle. Because oddly enough, I have an earworm from Final Fantasy 15, which does my fucking head in, which is Prompto going, "Oh, hi there, opening," during every single fight. Like that, I despise deep down within me.
I've discovered a new recipe.
Oh, but as long as it stays kind of rare, and maybe even if it popped like 2 or 3 times a playthrough, if like they sort of had a cap on it, so it could be really special, and not after the big fights. I don't want it as a reward for having defeated Red Dragon. I don't want it as a reward for having fought the Demon Wall. No. Those moments are too big, there's too much gravitas, and they already feel good. I want to have it just in a field battle at some point. Barrett gets excited and does the song. But that, like I said, doesn't put me in any one moment. It puts me back to just loving Final Fantasy as a series over the years, and it puts me back briefly to playing 7 and 8 and 10 and 6 and 15 and 12 and all these different games. So that has an amazing effect on me.
Yeah, I feel like Final Fantasy has a lot of them. Some of them are the songs. The soundtrack of Final Fantasy 7 will just always take me back. Some of them are just the sound effects. So like I still have the Final Fantasy 7 equip sound as my like text message notification on my phone, and when I'm like playing Final Fantasy 7 it gets super confusing because I just keep thinking my phone is going off. But outside of that series, I feel like it's a little more likely that it's the soundtrack. At least for me, just because I've sunk so many hours into that series that like every sound is familiar. But for me, I remember playing the Super Mario Brothers games, and Super Mario World and Super Mario 3 have just very, very memorable soundtracks. They're just immediately fun when you start playing those games, and it takes me back to that experience of just loading them up for the first time and being excited about all the new stuff that was going on in a Mario game, because nothing in Mario ever had to be a certain way. Like there's no plot, there's no lore that you needed to fit. It was just, let's make new shit up, and they did, and it was always exciting.
Yeah. You'll always hear the just spend a little bit of time in Twitch, and you'll hear that and some kind of redemption for the Final Fantasy thing that Com mentioned.
The victory fanfare.
Yeah, it's either everywhere. A follow or a sub or something. Tons of people use it, so it's highly associated across the board.
Same can be said, I think, for the Metal Gear one. The banana just played the bloom. You could definitely hear that in often in New Follower, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Nintendo games that Banana had just kind of touched it, but there's a ton of them. Even the fairy song in Zelda, it's like a place of sanctuary.
There's the Legend of Zelda sound when you open a chest.
There's that.
I think that one sticks with me a lot, mostly because of how repetitive it got in like some of the later games, where like that tone would play for like 10 seconds while you went through the cinematic of opening a chest, which you didn't need, but then you draw out like an item you didn't care about, like, oh, 50 rupees, my wallet's full. Great, we went through that little cinematic. I'm gonna get back to the game now.
Dig Dug, because the Dig Dug music happens as you're moving, and so when you don't move, it kind of stops, and then it stops. So it's you immediately associate the sound of you doing something with the game. The earworm in that is that I could not hear that in any other game and not think of something. It would always be like Dig Dug, and it's so like that's Dig Dug. I know that one. So,
well, just having to think actually, and I think little sound effects are oddly enough the thing that I think I would be drawn to more than any music or more than any of the small melodies, because I think the Final Fantasy Victory Fanfare, we could even say it's a song. It's a very, very short one, but it's a song, and it does blend into that part that follows it. But I think the thing I like with gaming so much is the satisfactory feeling that you can get from just a sound effect, just a clunk or a bump or a punch, wherever it might be. And Banana, as mentioned already, the menu sounds of Final Fantasy, which I think are really awesome. I remember the last time that I started up the game, I did have a nice moment of, ooh, when I moved the pointer from one main to another and just heard the blip, and it's just so good. But the game that came to mind immediately for sound effects, and it's just little things when you discover a new area, when you complete a quest, that kind of thing. I think one of the games with the most positive feedback is Skyrim. Very, very small sounds. But if you remember just the level up, that little sort of like whoom sound. If you remember every time you do a small objective, there's that clunk sort of sounds like maybe someone just, if you think of a really tightly skinned drum, it just sounds like someone just tapping on one of those. And then you have whenever you discover a new wall and you get a new sound, you get that little dragon voice sort of playing. There's a massive variety, oddly enough, to those very, very small sounds. It doesn't just have a bloop, you've done something good. No, there's something new in every context. There's something for discovering a new place. There's something for leveling up. There's something for a quest objective. There's something for finding a new word. And I think that's really, really special. And it's probably one of the things that makes that game so good is if you think about it, Skyrim is this endless loop of just positive feedback. You walk 50 meters down the road and you find a new enemy, or you find a new cave, or you find a nice view, whatever it might be. But go back and look at your map later, and the markers are everywhere. And every time you found one of them, something happened. Something very, very small. And the game just pushes you to keep on going. And those small sound designs, I think, must play a huge part in us wanting to keep going.
Yeah, Skyrim, when you level up, it's that and
that's the one.
Yeah.
I remember that one. And for
that one. Sorry, I was just saying that one in the Legendary Edition, that one gets old because you hear that every time you reset a skill tree, and you'll find those mechanisms that let you rapidly level up an ability, and then you just end up hearing that sound over and over and over again. You're like, all right, just let's move this along.
Well, it's interesting because it moved on so much. Now I think about it, you said that it became repetitive. I never quite got there. I never played the Legendary Edition. I would never have been reskilling and respecking. So I'd have been hearing it few and far between. But the slight variations in all the different sounds, it makes me think of how much they improved from Morrowind, where just every now and again you just get the annoying, where you've done anything. And it's just incredibly irritating after a short while of playing the game normally. The fact that they can keep giving us these different sounds all through the game, and in a natural playing of the game, they don't get annoying.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
That's absolutely something that needs to be said. That got annoying to me because I played Skyrim wrong. And it was like, that was entirely on me. That's not a sound design issue. That was me choosing to play the game in a way that the developers never intended.
Yeah, I play on the hardcore, not because it's like hardcore, like no saves or anything. I do it for the survival stuff. I think that's what it's called, survival, not hardcore. I think it's called survival. And
yeah, but you wanted to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
I play on the better than you difficulty, whatever that is.
But I don't do a lot of mods, but thank God Skyrim is definitely one of those that allows you to have mods, because I couldn't do it without like those some of the like tents and things, because
the bigger trees.
Yeah, bigger trees. But the survival mod, the survival version of that has a moment where when you're really cold, and Skyrim is filled with nothing but cold everywhere, you will start to lose your health. And so when you finally find a fire or something warm, the character in Survivor will breathe like a relief, like, ah. And that became so tactile to me, because like I needed to find something. Otherwise, I'm just going to die out here from exposure. So that became one of those things that I looked forward to hearing in a really weird way, because even if you go from like bonfire to bonfire to bonfire just to kind of get across a map, because there's no fast travel in that, then it became one of those like, oh, so glad I made it here. So it became a comfort more than anything else. So as an earworm, it worked. But
well, that's where you can associate with a game like Resident Evil, where it's not the sound effect, but the feeling when the door closes behind you and the save room music plays, and you just have a few moments of, okay, I'm safe, I can relax. And essentially, yeah, in Skyrim, your character physically lets out that exhalation. Your character physically goes, ooh. Essentially, we as the player do that in Resident Evil every time we go in one of those save rooms. It's just Skyrim does that for you, which is great, because it gives you just something audible that tells you, good job, kid. You did great.
There was one that I noticed from watching back that episode 50, and it was in the introduction to Baldur's Gate 2, the little cinematic that Legion put together. At the very end, when that kind of confrontation between Irenicus and the mages is resolved, you can hear the level up sound in the soundbite that's played. And it was one of those things that like I didn't think of when we brought up the idea of earworms, or like those sounds that trigger a memory. But as soon as I heard that, it almost made me want to go back to play Baldur's Gate 2 just to relive that experience of like, oh, I beat the tutorial dungeon, we're starting the game, and I get my first level up, and we're going to start customizing this character even more than just the character creation build.
I'm not going with him. I'm not.
It was one of those things that like I wouldn't have thought of like triggering that memory unless I had very recently heard it. But that was definitely one that like as soon as I heard that in the little intro, I was like, maybe I should play Baldur's Gate 2 again.
Yeah, there's tons. That's why I brought up Baldur's Gate, because there's actually, I mitigated it quite a bit, but there's so many little things. That's just like, I know for me, like every single game when I start open world anything, I think I'm going to hear that. And when I don't, it's not the same. But there's so many little sound effects within Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 that just...
But that's what the best of these are going to do, is they're going to make you want to play that game again. And just in hearing the sound effect, it's going to make you think, oh, one more go. That would be okay. One of them that does it for me is Resident Evil 4. Just the merchants, the what are you buying? That, if I hear someone do it, I could go and play that again. Why not?
It's funny because I was trying to think of those moments, like those sounds in games that make you relive a memory, and like that level up sound effect in Baldur's Gate worked for me. The merchant Resident Evil 4. But there are those other sound effects, and you've mentioned one of them that like you must gather your party before venturing forth. There are those ones that are like, oh, this is gonna be tedious bullshit, isn't it? And I was thinking, there were two that popped in my mind in that category. One of them is the StarCraft, you must construct additional pylons. And then the other one was the Mass Effect death sound.
Boom, 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 boom.
That's one of those ones where you go back to that moment of frustration where you're like, well, fuck, I didn't even know there were enemies coming from that direction. Now my party's dead. And it weirdly is that frustration that will still get me to go back and play those games. So like, yeah, but the game was great. So like that moment might happen, but I'm still gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, I think on the same note, the most identifiable sound for me from Dark Souls is just the "you died." Whoa. That's it, and I'll hear that.
Well, that's the one we're all most familiar with,
right? Yeah. Very familiar with the Bloodborne one as well, where every time you died, you get a nice ominous "ooh" whenever your character drops back in. You know, it's an unpleasant sound. It's happening at an unpleasant moment, but when I hear it, it pulls me back, and yeah, it does make me think maybe I do want to go back and play. But like you said, it'll also be, now when I'm playing in the game, it'll be the thing that makes me want to turn the fucking game off.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of sound effects in RTSs that do that. When you said that, Banana, like the Age of Empires with wololo, or the clunk, clunk,
Yeah.
like you're building something. There's so many like little things that you want to hear that you're looking for, so that way you know when something's completed, when you've started something, when you've run out of something. It's a cue, especially when you start playing at a really fast level, that's your audio cue, because you're in a different scene, you're in a different part of the map, but you can still hear what's being completed, and that's supposed to be your little trigger to say, I need to do the next thing because I already have my plan of action 3 steps down. Well, okay, so I played high level Age of Empires at one point, but you would actually use the sound effects as your cues to help you, even though you couldn't see exactly what was going on in front of you. But yeah, tons of RTSs do that for good reason.
But that's where the question would be, across different genres of games, how much of this is communicating necessities and how much of it is just communicating just pleasure, just the small sounds that feel good. These you don't really need, but we're going to put them in because we can. You don't need the da 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 when we win a fight, because I can see I won the fight. Everyone's dead. I won the fight, and now I'm picking up their loot, and that's wonderful. I don't need the bloop when I'm going through the menus in Final Fantasy, because the hand is pointing at the menu and it's going up and down. I don't need it, but we do it just for really the not tactile, that's the wrong word, but just that audible response, that little feedback of yes, 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 and after the battle, the well done, you did good. But a game like you say, like Age of Empires, you need it. It's not being done just for the pleasure. It's really, no, you need this. This is going to be another way that if I can just flatter your ego there for a second, another way that the high level players are going to be communicating with the game, and it's going to be communicating with them. So I think it's an interesting distinction between casual gaming and more, to use your word, hardcore gaming. It's going to be interesting to see exactly where they have their sound effects, how they differ from each other, and what the intended purpose behind them actually was.
Yeah, if I hear that war horn, doo-doo, somebody saw me, somebody's attacking, something's happening, that'll still get me now. Like,
Set it as your morning alarm clock.
If it's not me attacking, something's going on. Yeah.
Bringing up the morning alarm clock reminded me of what I think is pretty widely regarded as the most anxiety-inducing noise in video gaming, and it is the drowning timer in Sonic video games.
I knew this one was coming up. Yes.
Yeah, that is one that like I've heard people suggest like you should set it as your wake up alarm, and you will get out of bed first time every time to go shut that alarm off, because it's just so upsetting. And I can absolutely believe it, because of the mechanics of that moment in the game. You are desperately trying to find a bubble somewhere that doesn't really care. Like the timing of those things is completely inconvenient, and it is waiting for you to just be on that screen for enough time for a bubble to spawn. Meanwhile, your timer is at the point where like you don't have that much time to waste. So you're looking at your salvation. It's not coming, and that timer is counting down. You're just like, this is fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Zelda did that with it. When you get down to like one heart, it starts going.
Oh yeah,
it's the most annoying thing in the world because you can't just find a health thing. You have to fight something or lift something, or it just, you know. Otherwise, you can't make that sound go away. It's a bit annoying. Metroid didn't do that, but then again, the energy cell which you use to refill Samus's health. You can find them pretty much anywhere, and so it doesn't take much to get some of those energies back. But I wish they had done something like that for Zelda originally. But again, that shows the evolution of gaming because, you know, Samus did. Metroid came shortly after the Zelda, and if that was annoying for them, then let's not do that.
Well, Zelda kept it in subsequent entries for some reason. I remember playing Ocarina of Time, and it's just that bing bing every time like you're alerted that you're at low health, and it just continues. It's like, yeah, I know I'm at low health. You're not helping.
It's something of a pet peeve of mine in gaming, and I do recognize to some degree the necessity of it because the game does need to really let you know the urgency of the situation. But when a game does have you, and associated with games like Mass Effect, associated with games like Spec Ops, there's a lot of third-person shooters, maybe first-person. I think Uncharted does it too. When you're down to that 25, 10% health, and now the edge of your screen starts turning red, and it starts maybe getting a little bit fluid, and you get the sound. The sound might be your heartbeat. The sound might be just some ominous sort of like pressing, thumping noise, but something is telling you 10% health, 10% health, 10% health, 10% health, 10% health. And when the game is really hammering that home, I hate it. I really despise it. But I can see why they do it, of course, because if your health bar is just in that corner, very, very small, you might not necessarily notice. But goodness, it's something I don't like.
With the low health in Mass Effect 2 and 3, you start to lose your hearing a little bit. When your shields go down and your health goes down, it gets to be a little bit more
Oh, God, you get that boom sound as well at the end of the shield, right?
Yeah, and then also they have the concussion grenades that get introduced around the Kasumi quest and also Mass Effect 3. So it's a very similar feeling, even if you have full health. It's just like a concussion supposed to like kind of mess with you. So it took me a little while to kind of like associate the difference between it because they kind of meshed it in without the health being a factor there. It's just a concussion grenade. So they could have done that a little differently, for sure. But not so much of an earworm
it's one of those
as much
things
as a trigger.
I don't really know how.
Yeah.
I don't. That's one of the things I don't know how many ways there are to communicate that in a way that's visible, audible enough that every player is going to understand it. Especially, and we've talked about this so many times before. People who are maybe playing their first game, playing their second game, you need to communicate possibly with a language that's a bit more heavy-handed that we might not appreciate because we might think, well, I can see my health bar, I can see it, but it does make the game a bit more accessible for everyone in the same way that the yellow boards on the walls that you can climb just make the game a bit more accessible for everyone, allow us to all play with the same sort of experience at the end.
I know Diablo, definitely a lot of people know that Tristram song, and it's really just the first opening area of Diablo 2. I mean, there's nothing really much going on, but you spend a lot of time there because you're learning the game. A lot more people have entry level into Diablo 2 than they did to Diablo 1, back in the day, just based on sales and just based on popularity and stuff. Very similar to like Dragon Age. A lot more people have played Dragon Age Inquisition than have played Origins or Dragon Age 2, but yet they go, oh, Dragon Age Origins is my favorite or whatever. And that's fine, but there's so many more people that started their journey in Dragon Age Inquisition. Diablo 2 is one of those that Tristram music really gets to a lot because that music goes hard at the beginning. It's really good.
Dark Horse for sort of a music choice that I then really, really associate with a specific game, and they're almost intertwined. Cyberpunk, that intro sort of music, the press start to begin music, my goodness, it goes so damn hard. It is an incredible little tune. It's not long, like 45 seconds maybe? But my goodness, just the feel and the power of that. If I hear anything that even sounds vaguely similar, a vaguely industrial feel, I'm drawn to Cyberpunk, which I didn't expect from that game, not in the slightest.
Yeah, I think I sent you a song before, and you. No. I know what it was. It was we were talking about the video awards, and I mentioned Chord Hell was there. It's like, I can't believe Chord Hell's there. And I think you may have forgotten this, but I think you said, I think they were in Cyberpunk. And I was like, no, they were not in. I know Chord Hell. They're more that digital cyberpunky sound. They should be in Cyberpunk, but they're not in Cyberpunk. And I was surprised to see them there at the thing. I was like, oh, they're getting some recognition. Maybe we'll hear them in something like a Cyberpunk, because they're definitely a unique sound that belongs in that Cyberpunk universe. But it's definitely transports you into that feeling, that zone that is uniquely Cyberpunk. Yeah.
Well, that's what sound effects and music can actually do, can't they? They can go a long way to creating the game world, to creating the ambience that you're actually supposed to find yourself in. And if you think of a game like Cyberpunk, the music all sounds, and for lack of a better term, it all sounds very cyberpunky. It is the kind of music that you think, yeah, they probably listen to that in this world. That makes sense. And I think that's where the real joy of BioShock and Fallout were in particular. I can't remember if it's in the original Fallout games or if it's more of Fallout 3 and onwards. But being able to hear the 1950s and prior music in this world where what you see isn't communicating to you 1950s. This, to a degree, it is, but it's very post-1950s. But the music is so purely rooted in that moment that it creates this amazing dichotomy between the audio and the visuals that is some way then intertwined to give you this entirely new creation that maybe shouldn't work, but really, really does. And I think they're the two standout examples for me. And it's very different to Cyberpunk, where the music fits Cyberpunk. I think the Fallout music doesn't fit Fallout, but it doesn't fit in such an incredibly crafted way that it absolutely fits.
Yeah, filmmakers do this a lot. They introduce a song or a sound that is completely opposite of the feel of what you're supposed to have. You know who does this really well as well is sometimes Silent Hill. Silent Hill is a great psychological horror game in that you're thinking one thing, but the other thing is actually happening. And so it's the sleight of hand that the game is constantly doing to you. Like, it looks like just a regular bar that's been gutted. You go in there and there's some monsters in there, but within that, then that's where you need to find this that plays this record that you want to, that unlocks a memory for you. It's this constant tug of war of the senses that the music plays and the sound effects have in Silent Hill. The newest one really seems to be the one that's coming out soon. Silent Hill F seems to really be playing on the whole, like, beautiful aesthetic, horrible situation, beautiful music, bad things happening in the scene. But they're ones that really play on that. But yeah, film does that quite a bit, and you're starting to see, I think, some more and more titles try to integrate some of that whole pull the rug underneath you type.
You probably haven't played it, because I think we've talked about it before, and I seem to remember Banana responding, but you not. Doki Doki Literature Club does something very, very similar, where the music, I think, doesn't really change for most of the game. It definitely changes, but not for most of the game, and it's always that just sort of happy, upbeat, a little too cheery dating sim music, while, of course, the game is not that. And it's almost more unsettling for the continuing happiness of the music to keep playing as the world around you degrades.
Yeah, I think that was something we talked about in our music episode, the idea that people who are really capable within the context of sound design will recognize that sometimes a completely dissonant sound, a sound that doesn't match the tone of, you know, the environment or the scenario that you're in, can be more effective. It's not something that I would ever, like, personally think, like, oh, I know exactly what sound is needed in this moment. But when you play those games and it's done well, it hits. It, like, you recognize it immediately as, like, oh, the 1950s music while I'm underwater in this hyper-futuristic BioShock environment that has those connections to the 1950s. Like, yeah, it doesn't really fit, but it fits.
Yeah.
And those will definitely stick with you.
Well, that's what's so hard to get right as well, isn't it? I mean, you have to have the utmost confidence in your sound design. When we think about what an important role sound and music plays in a video game, in a movie, just at setting the tone. The idea that you're going to say, no, I won't play the sad music over the sad scene. I'm going to play the happy song. And to make it work, it's such an incredible risk. And I think we find ourselves, we appreciate that subconsciously, the idea of, wow, that's brave to do this. And then when it works, my goodness, it works so incredibly well.
Yeah, there's a couple I mentioned before we started here, which we always, who's ever watching, we always briefly talk about the subject before. It's not like we get a whole script or a transcript.
Very
and we're like,
I see, yeah, I bet it shows.
But there was a song that's out there, and it's interesting because this is a gaming podcast. So there is a little known song. Well, it's well known actually, but it's little known where it came from, I should say. But it's from a game called Lazy Jones. That's where I got my information mixed up. But the Lazy Jones is from 1984. And the song is called Stardust, but you have heard this song, I guarantee it. It's the sports song that goes da 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 da. Every sports arena has done it. Sometimes you'll hear it even for concerts, like before a thing or whatever. But it comes from that. It was remixed later on by somebody, but it's the same notes. It's just more modernized in the early 1990s, I think. But that's the one we all hear. But it came directly from that song. So that just goes to show that an earworm can even help an artist make some extra money off a defunct company.
They never saw the royalty check from that, did they?
Probably not. No,
they didn't get the co-writer
that's
credit.
why we don't know where it came from. But and I mean, who's looking for a game that you can play in 1984 nowadays? Good luck, you know.
I wonder who actually, if anyone owned that song by the time that it was sampled and redone, or if the rights had just kind of slipped away. Because I'm thinking of
David Whittaker.
Into the Music World.
Yeah, David Whittaker's the original composer for that song.
Did he still own it?
I don't know about that, but it was a Zombie Nation who redid it. So
I'm going to just load the song and see if he got a co-writing credit. I'm just thinking of the song Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve, which you may well be aware of, for which Mick Jagger, I believe, and Keith Richards have a co-writing credit because the string part is taken from a Rolling Stones song. I don't know if it was lifted directly or if it just happens to be incredibly similar. But when you think about that string part is important to the song, but there's a whole verse and there's a whole chorus as well, which was then handwritten by Richard Ashcroft and The Verve. They still had to give a co-writing credit to the Rolling Stones because of that hook. Their song actually has other parts, but that song that you just mentioned, can you remember anything or give a shit about any part of that song that isn't just the da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da? Co-writing credit, that guy wrote it.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think I could imagine our life in sports without that song.
I've just checked. David Whittaker got a co-writing credit.
There you go.
He was paid an undisclosed sum by Zombie
for
Nation.
writing the entirety of that song.
Thanks for helping us out, buddy. Work well done. So it kind of goes to show that, you know, with time, you become vintage and popular, even if you don't expect to. So that's where I hope our podcast goes with time.
One day in the archives,
Yeah.
there'll be a hit song just sampling us.
Remember when Legion was only 50 and he was still recording?
Only 50, only 50, only 50.
Yeah.
We're going to be huge.
We're the dick pic of podcasts, just sampled constantly.
Maybe Dave the Diver, because a lot of people have played that now.
Mm-hmm.
There's that whole like, dude, there's that music both at Bancho Sushi and when he's diving that are just so like, I could listen to that diving music for quite a while. It does get old, but it's not it's not bad. The Bancha one is just great because you're kind of just in there and kind of out and go do. It's kind of bumping.
Dave the Diver was one where the music I didn't find that interesting. It wasn't like Dredge, where I thought the music was just the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Dave the Diver was one of those real, this is passable, this is fine, but the sound effect combined with the visual when you would pull on the trigger of the harpoon, I thought that was outstanding. Like the real feedback that you got when you were doing that last moment of the aim before the shot. I think that in terms of just quality, that's a real 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. That's an almost best of a year, best of a generation kind of sound effect, combined with the visual, definitely. But it's incredible. I don't think it's in the past 5 years. It might be in the past like 8, 9 years. But the returning axe in God of War, when you throw the landing back in your hand, you feel like you caught that axe. I think that's one for me of the real, it's special, real modern defining sound effects in the game.
Yeah, I was always, when I played the God of War, I waited for it to come out on PC, and I was just like, when do I get my chains? When do I get my chains? And when I finally got the chains, they sounded like the shh. It was like, wasn't as clunky as that axe, but I was just glad to have my chains. But yeah, definitely, they did a good job with both of them, the axe and the chains.
I think that's a game, though, where when you play it, you can feel the mastery of the developers in that game. I don't think there's anything. I didn't really get as far in the game as I meant to, because I started on a harder difficulty than I probably should have, and it's not that fun. I don't think it translates up to the harder difficulties as well as I'd like it to. It's really, really hard when you get past normal, and not in a satisfying way, more in just a fucking shoot my face off kind of way. So the problem I had was of my own making. But when I think back to the good parts of that game, of the character control, of the combat, of the way the camera moves in combat, it just feels so good. And every hit that you do, it feels like it's Kratos hitting someone. You don't get that with the classic God of Wars, because you weren't supposed to. There's almost it's not the right word, but a bullet hell aspect to the combat. You're surrounded by enemies, they're constantly coming, and you're just throwing endless people off, and just whatever. It is what it is. But in this, I felt like every single hit, it felt like a man with that size arms was hitting someone. It was just so powerful. And it was that combination of the control system, which made sense, the camera control, the music, and the sound design.
Yeah, he may just be fighting one of those elves or something, which, they're pretty powerful. But he even yells at it. He's like, yeah. And then he hits it, and then he goes, huh.
Man.
So it's the whole thing. Yeah, it's like they really went to town on the sound effects on God of War. Mm-hmm.
But that's what you have to get right. I mean, Dredge, I swear the music put me off. Really, the music, the sound design, which, not to beat a dead horse, but if it's dead, why not? It's so incredibly dull. It's just so uninspiring that when I was playing the game, I felt like I was playing a Flash game, like a Newgrounds type game. There was nothing in it, because it didn't feel like it had a soul. Whereas if you look at those games that you love, and of course it's a bit of a self-selecting critique, we already love them, but their sound is almost certainly going to be really on point.
Yeah, Banana can attest to this. It's like going back to Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, all the characters are unique, and their soundboard is unique too. So you get somebody like Zan, who's like, our quest is vain. He's like the emo mage of the group. I mean, granted, he may say the same thing several times if you have him in the party, but there's enough going on that he may say different things. In the battle, or in case of like just waiting around, they start like chiming in. But yeah, there's a bunch of them. Banana probably knows the soundboard better than I do.
Yeah, I will say that going to Baldur's Gate 3, I was super happy that Jaheira never went with Yes, oh omnipresent authority figure. God, that would have pissed me off bringing that one back. I
can,
need sass.
I was just gonna say it was another one that you'd sort of pull to banana for their thought on it. But I was thinking about working within the limitations of the sound that you had at the time. But to bring us back to Final Fantasy VII, Banana, Ifrit, the summon, do you remember sort of what it looks like appearing in the sky, doing his arms, bellowing, then the fire like sort of spurring out of the mouth? That fire sounded hot. There was something about it, just that low rumbling sound effect that they managed to have all the way through, just working with what they had, because they didn't have the chance to record that high quality audio. But they managed to make this little animation feel hot. And they managed to make Shiva feel cold.
It was really interesting because Shiva did that perfect blend of delicate and powerful at the same time with the audio, that like as soon as Diamond Dust was cast, you heard that kind of like tingle of like light chimes, and you were like, oh, this is cool. I know exactly what's going on, and I'm on board with it.
There's that one moment, isn't it, where it just peaks, just as the glass is about to shatter, I think. And there's like, ting! Oh. Put it up, Legion. If he doesn't, this is going to look stupid.
It's funny that we're talking about, like, well, it's Final Fantasy VII, so of course we're talking about the things that we love. But I couldn't help but think of The Legend of Zelda and those helper sounds that you get. So in Ocarina of Time, I think it was Navi, and she would have this really delicate, like,
Hey, listen!
Whenever there was something you needed to direct your attention to. And that sound is really pleasant. It got annoying because it happened a lot, but the sound itself is really pleasant. And then you move on to Skyward Sword, and anything that Fee says to you over the course of that game is annoying, because that character is just inherently the worst. She will repeat everything that you've learned in the game for like minutes at a time. And you're just like, I just want to move on. Like, this is not a reward for that thing I just did. I need you to understand that this is a punishment, and I hate you. So like, just the kind of garbled voice that they gave Fee, because she doesn't have like vocals. It's just this kind of almost like digitized sound that plays whenever she speaks. It's just one of those things. It's just like, oh fuck this again. And I didn't get any of that from Final Fantasy VII. Like, even when I'm doing the chocobo racing and I have to hear that like work at the very beginning, and I'm doing it so much because I need to get 6 chocobos to S rank before I can breed the next one. Like, it's so tedious. Never got old.
Agreed.
I've never played Minecraft. Are y'all familiar with any Minecraft? Because I've heard there's a lot of sounds that are recognizable in Minecraft.
Oh, there are definitely some sounds that will trigger a response. The creeper hiss right before they explode, that's a panic-inducing one. Because for those of you who aren't familiar, creepers are an enemy in Baldur's Gate. Jesus.
Baldur's Minecraft.
Creepers are an enemy in Minecraft. They're penis-shaped, and they basically are called creepers because they will sneak up on you and then explode, damaging you and the surrounding blocks. So when you're building something, that is a huge inconvenience. When you're working with anything that's like mildly dangerous by itself, because you can move lava and stuff around in Minecraft, then it becomes even more problematic because now they've destroyed the terrain and the lava is flowing away you didn't want it to, and changing flow in Minecraft is a pain in the ass. But that hiss has a slight delay before the actual explosion goes off. So you have that moment of, oh fuck, where is that? I can still do something about it. You can't. You can't really. It's over. But it is that brief moment of, oh fuck, I need to do something. And then on the other side, there's that noise that means you can't do anything. You have to put up with this for a while. And it is the villagers in that game. And for anybody who's seen like the previews for the Minecraft movie that's coming out, they use the exact villager sound effect. And it's just this kind of annoying, And that happens periodically whenever you're in a village. And it's just so grating when you're surrounded by like 8 villagers who are all making that noise periodically. You're just like,
Is it?
I can kill you. I can kill. That's a thing I can do in the game.
Is it as much like the 1950s radio announcer as you made it sound? Yeah, see? Is it?
So there's no words to it. It's just, yeah, it's definitely that accent. But yeah, no, that's. I mean, I'm not a great impressionist. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Banana voice over for Minecraft. So
Yeah.
So there's Minecraft, and we went over the horror stuff, but I would think there'd be a lot more horror games that I would just off the top of my head be able to like pinpoint. I know for me, Myst, when I've played Myst and Riven and stuff, there's so many audio cues because there's a lot of puzzles tied directly to sound or music, and in fact in Myst, there's a just the typical keyboard. You got to play a tune on it, but there's certain parts of it, and I can't remember so much in Myst, but I know in Riven they changed it with the newest one that's out there. But there used to be a distinct sound that you would hear from a particular animal in that area, and that's what you used to unlock the puzzle. You had to be listening for it. You had to know the association for it, and so it's not so much of an earworm, but it was much of a I can remember it now, even though the most modern game didn't use it. I was expecting to hear it. It's like, I know those sounds, but they didn't. They went a different way. They went pure visual in the most modern version. But yeah, I would think those puzzle games and the horror games would rely on the audio cues a little bit more.
Well, I would say maybe as we're not at the end yet, but approaching the end, might be an idea to just sort of think, is there one sound that you would say this is sort of the iconic sound for me? Because right now we've kind of broached over quite a few, we talked about quite a few, but is there one which when you really think about it, you say, oh yeah, that's gaming, or that is so unique, so distinct to the game that it comes from, that this has to be the one? If someone said to me, what epitomizes game sound design? Is there one that you think, yeah, this is the prime example? And if you need, I've got one prepared.
The Super Mario coin collecting sound.
Dude, that or the Sonic ring collecting sound.
Yeah. One of those two is just like defined an era of gaming, because that was, even if they weren't the best selling, those were like the most well-known video games of all time.
Yeah.
For an extended period. There was just years where everybody knew everything about the Mario games, and they knew that sound right away, even if they hadn't played them. And the same with Sonic, that collecting a ring sound became so ubiquitous that like people who didn't play video games knew it. That's what video games sound like.
I think Mario today, if you had in like a television commercial or something, if you had someone eat something and like, doubles in size or whatever, you could do that exact same sound effect of Mario getting bigger, and everyone would understand. You wouldn't need to remotely communicate. You wouldn't need a Mario in the background or anything like that to hammer this home. We'd know exactly what that was. Yeah, Mario sound design, I think, has a special level that it reached that most games were not able to attain, and I think now will not be able to attain, just because now we expect so much more as well. We expect a wider sound palette. Whereas with Mario, there's a handful of sounds. They just all happen to be perfect.
Based on your question, I don't really know if it applies to me, but I can say that I know it when I hear it for the Street Fighter stuff. Anything Street Fighter has a very similar, it's what is it, Hadouken?
That's what I was just thinking. Hadouken! Yes.
Yeah. So you know what you're doing at the time when you're doing it, and it's very associated with that and nothing else. So, yeah.
I think my one would be the same sort of thing. It's not a fighting game like that, but it's sort of an action game sound. I don't think any sound's ever summed up gaming to me quite like the original shotgun in Doom. Going way back to the original Doom, just the That I've never fucking held a shotgun in my life, but I assume that's exactly what they sound like.
Well, come on down, Texas.
There were
Walking that line between
some-
sinister and creepy. Sinister and creepy, sinister and sexy. My bad.
There's a fine line between those two. There were definitely some sounds that popped into my head when you asked that question that were like, they're not definitively gaming, but they are the sound you think of when you think of that game. One of them was the dog laughing from Duck Hunt. Fuck that dog. And then the other one that I could think of was the sound of getting a star in Super Punch-Out. And that is one that sticks with you because you get this like super excited and anxious feeling when you get it because you're like, oh, I have a star. I can do the cool thing. I can't take a hit because I will lose my star. So like everything just gets heightened in that moment. And there's that sound that like really sets the tone of like, oh, it's on now. You need to focus.
I think a lot of the ones, they will have something like that associated with them, won't they? It's a lot of the sounds that we're going to like, they're going to be associated with an increase and a ratcheting up in tension. So if you think of that moment, I always feel I remember from Fight Night, one of the boxing games on the PlayStation or the Xbox, there's a moment if your character takes like a big hit and they go a bit wobbly legged, everything just sounds a bit different. And again, it's the same kind of reaction. It's that, okay, got to get this right now, got to get this right. The tension just builds. Yeah, a lot of them, they're going to be associated with a big moment, right? It's more than just the sound. It's the escalation that accompanies the sound.
It's the hammer tune that it plays in Super Smash Brothers when somebody picks one of those up.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody is like, even the person holding the hammer is like, oh, it's on now. I need to make use of this. And everybody else is like, I need to get the fuck away from that. Just everything becomes so much more intense in that moment.
How have we not mentioned on the same note? The Mario Kart picking up the star, like you get that and just everyone's like, oh shit, where's that guy? It's just everything changes just for that 10-15 seconds that person has that power up. And suddenly had the big gong from Mortal Kombat and all of the
I was going to say Mortal
fatalities.
Kombat definitely has a few of them. The finish hit or
yes,
the toasty one. Oh,
toasty.
Everybody remembers that for Mortal Kombat 2. And I think there was like something tied to that where like if you hit a sequence of buttons when it happened, you could unlock a secret fight. So everybody was like always on edge hoping it would happen. And that made it that much more memorable that like we would associate this unlockable thing with this kind of random event that would happen.
Absolutely. Gosh.
And then on the other side, you have the sound effects of those gruesome fatalities and brutalities that were in Mortal Kombat. And some of those I don't want to remember the sounds. They were gross.
Not unless you won, maybe.
Yeah, but even then, I kind of like Sonya. I don't want to tear her heart out.
She may have had
Kind of do though.
Well, if you like the podcast, give it a like.
I did.
Yeah, if you want to tear out Sonya's heart, give it a like.
You monster.
Yeah. Subs are free in YouTube. We are also on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music.
I'm not even going to help you.
Yeah.
You should know by now.
So, anyway.
Past episode 50.
Yeah. Hey, I just publish them. I don't really... I do all the editing. I listen to it all day. So, appreciate everybody being here. And we'll check you guys later. Again, if you have any earworm comments or suggestions or find out, y'all were wrong about this one or need to add one of your own, put it in the comments. We will check you guys later.
I'm sure there's plenty we forgot.
Oh, yeah. And we'll think of 20 after we get done for sure. So, yeah. We'll check you later. Bye-bye.